Mixbus Mania! Alright, hey everyone, welcome to my new series called Mixbus Mania, where I will attempt to explain features, functionality, and usage of Mixbus in small chunks with a little more context and in a little more step-by-step detail than you might find elsewhere. That's kind of my jam. That's kind of what I like to do. So in this Mixbus Mania, the first ever, we're going to talk about mixer settings, saving them, recalling them, and wiping them out. These are some new features as of Mixbus version 5 that see Lua scripting working its way more into the Mixbus product. So just by way of context here, I have a full band session open. It's got drums, bass, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, some organ, and vocals. All the groups are set up, and I'm about halfway through the mix. So here's what it sounds like.
But when you found me passed out on the hardwood, you knew just what I need to stay alive. You gave me my own.
So this mix is about halfway done. Not super important for our purposes. We just need to have a good example to talk about mix tools, storing mixer settings, recalling them, and resetting the mixer. So what are mixer settings? Why would you want to use them, and where are they located? First of all, where they're located. If you go up to the track menu on your main menu and then mouse over mix tools, you'll see settings here for store mixer settings, recall mixer settings, and reset the mixer. There's also an option for a track organizer, which I won't talk about in this video, but I will cover in another Mixbus Mania session. So what are some real-world uses of storing and recalling mixer settings? Well, one common request you might get is to have alternate versions of a mix that you've done. So your client or the record company might say, you know, we want a vocals up mix for this and we want a vocals down mix. So I'll show you how you can use mixer settings to save your mixes and get back and forth quickly between them. Another example might be that your mix is finished or it's almost finished, and you send it to the artist or to your band for final approval, and they send you some notes back to make changes. And you don't want to lose your first mix, you just want to make some new adjustments and then be able to save that, export it, and then get back to your old mix pretty quickly and easily if you need to adjust from there. And then again, sometimes you just want to wipe out your entire mix, start over with fresh ears and a clean slate because you don't feel like you're getting where you wanted to get with a mix. But it's usually a good idea in those instances to save your old mix, because sometimes you go through the whole thing again and you realize after listening, the first one was where it was at in the first place. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is save the settings for the mix that I have going right now, so I can get back to this anytime I want to. So I'm going to go up to Track in the main menu, then Mix Tools, and then Store Mixer Settings. And that opens the Store Mixer Settings dialog box. There's a name defaulted, it's the name of the session, and I can either save these mixer settings globally so they're accessible to any session I'm working in, or I can save them locally so they're only available for this session. And lastly, there's a checkbox here for selected tracks only, so if I only wanted to save the mixer settings for the tracks I've selected, I could check that. Okay, so I'll enter a name for this set of mixer settings. I'm just going to call this Mix 1, and I'll click OK. And now those mixer settings are saved. I'll show you where they're saved in just a minute. And now let's say that I'm in the second scenario that I talked about earlier. Let's say the mix is done, I've sent it to the artist, and they send back some notes for me. And those notes are that the mix is good, but they'd like to hear the backup vocals more equal with the lead vocal, so it sounds more like a duo up front, and also the lead vocal could be a little bit brighter. So let's take a quick listen to the mix as it is now, then I'll make those adjustments, we'll save the new mixer settings, and then we'll take a look at how you can get back and forth between the two versions of the mix.
But when you found me passed out on the hardwood,
the first thing I'll do is some additive EQ on the lead vocal.
you gave me my own artificial heart.
And then I'll just push up the level of this backup vocal so it's more even with the lead vocal. Now what I want to do is save these new adjusted mixer settings. So I'll go back to Track, Mix Tools, Store Mixer Settings. And I'm going to save this local to this session only as well. I'll give this a unique name that helps me remember what I did in this mix. And I want to save my settings for all of the tracks, not just some of them, so I won't check this Selected Tracks Only checkbox. Cool. So now I've got the settings saved for both versions of my mix. So again, here's the adjusted version.
But when you found me passed out on the hardwood, you knew just what I need to stay alive.
Now, if I want to compare this to the first mix, all I have to do is go up to Track, Mix Tools, and Recall Mixer Settings, and I'll bring the first mix back up. So this opens up the Recall Mixer Settings dialog box. Since I stored my settings locally for this session only, I'm going to leave Pick from Local Settings selected and click OK. And then I'm presented with a drop-down box where I can select which mixer settings I want to recall. Here you see the 2 mixer settings I've saved, and at the top of the Select a File box, just like everywhere else in Mixbus, you see the path to the location where these mixer settings are stored. So I'm going to go ahead and click the first mix, Mix 1, and click Open. And I'll click OK. And the next box that comes up is really for mapping. So it's asking me, hey, you're loading settings for tracks. Here are the tracks that I've got that you're asking me to load in. Which tracks in your session should these be mapped to? Now in this case, I'm loading tracks from the session that I've just been working in, and I haven't added any tracks or deleted any tracks. So the mapping is one-to-one, pretty straightforward, nothing has changed. But if something had changed and I did need to map settings to tracks in my session, I could do that just by clicking on the drop-down box and selecting the track in my session from the list that goes with the setting that I'm loading. Also at the top of this dialog box is a list of the groups that were in my session when I saved my mixer settings. All of those groups are still in my session, but if they weren't, I could click this Create Groups if Necessary checkbox, and the Recall Mixer Settings script would recreate those groups for me. So now I have successfully recalled the first mix, and I should hear lower background vocals and a little bit of a darker lead vocal as I had originally.
But when you found me passed out on the hardwood, you knew just what I need to stay alive.
So that sounds right. That's what I expected to hear when I loaded that mix. Now to get back to my original mix, I'll load those mixer settings the same way. So back up to Track, Mix Tools, and Recall Mixer Settings. I'll leave Pick from Local Settings selected and click OK. Here's my Select a Settings File drop-down box, and here I will select the adjusted mix settings for Mix 2. All of my mapping stays the same. I haven't changed anything. Create Groups if Necessary is checked, but all of my groups are still here, so nothing new needs to be created. And then you'll see the EQ activate. Those settings are updated. And my fader for the backup vocal track is high again.
But when you found me passed out on the hardwood, you knew just what I need to stay alive.
So now I'm back at the second adjusted mix. Alright, so up to this point we've saved our mix settings, we made some adjustments to our mix, and then we saved our updated mix settings. And then we were able to use Recall Mixer Settings to reload either of the mixes to compare them and go back and forth. Now let's say we just want to wipe out our entire mix. We've got a couple of mix settings saved, so we're safe there, but now we're just going to zero everything out and start over. So to do that, we're going back up to the Track option in the main menu, back to Mix Tools, and then we're going to choose the third option, Reset Mixer. So when I click that, I get the Reset Mixer dialog box, and this has a series of checkboxes that allow me to select which items in the mixer I want to reset. So you can select fader, mute, trim and phase, groups, etc., or you can leave them all checked and everything will be reset. Now by default, when you reset your mixer settings, your plugins will be left where they are, but they'll be bypassed. But if you do want to remove them, you can check the box next to this Remove Plugins instead of Bypassing option. I'm going to go ahead and leave my plugins where they are, so I won't check this box, and then I'll just click OK. So as soon as I click that, you can see all of my faders went to 0, and all of my plugins were bypassed. And just a word of caution, I'm sure you already know, just be careful before you play this back because your levels will be all over the place and probably way too hot. Don't blow yourself away. This can be a little scary because you've done all of this work and now it's gone in one click of a button. Never fear, you've saved your settings, so we'll just go back up to Track, Mix Tools, Recall Mixer Settings, and select one of the settings we've saved to our local settings. I'll go back to Mix 1, click Open, click OK. All of my mapping is the same. I'll scroll down just to double check and click OK. So that, in a nutshell, is how you store your mixer settings, recall them, and reset your mixer. You might be wondering, how is saving mixer settings different from creating snapshots? Well, snapshots actually allow you to save an entire copy of a session with everything in it, and they allow you to branch off from a mix and create different versions and follow them all the way through. And because of that, snapshots can take longer to load depending on what you have in your session, because they're really loading an entire session with everything in it. Whereas mixer settings are really just doing what the name says. They're saving the settings of the mixer in a file somewhere, and you're able to recall those settings in the session that you're already in. So that's very fast compared to loading an entire session snapshot or saved session. So far, the only time I've seen slowdowns when recalling mixer settings were in weird situations. One was I had loaded a Mixbus 32C session into Mixbus, and that caused an issue. And the other was when I forgot to turn off my antivirus and it was trying to protect the file or something like that. So if you do see any strange behavior with your mixer settings, you might want to check out your antivirus or other areas of your system that might be interfering. Alright guys, that does it for Mixbus Mania number 1. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it useful. I will see you in the next video. Hopefully that's coming right around the corner.